Hello, I'm Ted Gunderson. I retired from the FBI in 1979 after more than 27 years service. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division with more than 700 people under my command and a budget of more than $22.5 million. I recently decided to produce my own radio talk show. One of my guests was Chip Tatum, a former CIA 25-year black ops operator. At the end of the first show, 2 hours, I decided this man had much more information to furnish than he could furnish in that 2-hour period. I had him back for 13 more shows. I interviewed him for a total of 26 hours. This man has a phenomenal story. I've checked his story out. I can definitely state to you this man is credible, and the information he's furnishing is the truth. Listen and watch. You will be amazed at what you hear.
Hi, my name's Chip Tatum, and I'm an ex-intelligence officer for the United States government. 25 years ago, I started my service as a young airman in the United States Air Force. I went through Special Forces training as a combat controller and was subsequently sent to Vietnam. During my tour in Vietnam, I was recruited onto a team called Team Red Rock. The operation that we performed was Operation Red Rock. It was an operation designed to move Lon Nol, the premier of Cambodia, off of the proverbial fence and onto the side of the U.S. government. During this operation, Team Red Rock was captured. Orders were given by the President of the United States that Team Red Rock should not return to the United States. During our captivity, all but 2 of us were tortured to death. Following Operation Red Rock, I was debriefed by a man out of Saigon. This man came to Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, where I was being held as a patient, and debriefed me. During the debriefing, he explained to me what happened while we were in captivity and explained the events leading up to the captivity. He explained to me that when Washington decided to order Operation Red Rock, the President ordered that no one can ever know. With those orders to General Haig and to Dr. Henry Kissinger, the mission was given to Bill Colby, the station chief in Saigon, to prepare the mission and to ensure that the men performing the mission didn't return. At the end of the debriefing with Mr. Colby, he explained to me that I had a choice. I could either stay with the Air Force and go under the operational control of the CIA, or I could go under the direct employment of the CIA. I chose, as a young military man, to stay with what I knew. I enjoyed the Air Force, I enjoyed the camaraderie in the military, and I knew for sure that I wouldn't have to go back to Vietnam as an ex-prisoner of war. Well, I chose that route, and no sooner did I get back to the United States than I was turned around and sent back to the Southeast Asia area again. I moved in and out of Vietnam under the operational control of the CIA, attached to a company called Air America. My job was to jump into the area of downed Air American aircraft and communicate to move them out and extract them from the area. In 1975, my operational control mission sent me to a place called Yugoslavia. I actually based out of Italy, but we crossed the border into Yugoslavia to try to ascertain the condition of Tito and the condition of the country, to try to find out who was going to be replacing Tito in the event of his death. President Tito was very ill. I spent 2 years in that area of operations, and then upon Mr. Colby's advice, I left active service for the United States government. When I left service, I went into a place called Gunderson, Colorado. I started my family. I had a little deli. I was working in the deli one day, and a couple of the boys came in wearing suits and sunglasses. They told me that the government needed me, and I was reactivated involuntarily to the United States Army this time. I was sent to a place called Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Fort Campbell was basing a new special operations unit The buildup of this unit was in response to our problem in the Iranian desert in the failed hostage rescue unit under the Carter administration. The year was 1980. The activation of me into this unit brought on an all-new meaning to me in the area of intelligence work. Previous to this time, although Team Red Rock was betrayed by the President and his orders that we shouldn't return, I found no other involvement of the government in misdeeds. However, from the day I joined Task Force 160 at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, until today, I've seen nothing but government corruption.
He said, pending before this court, and I won't bore you with the first language. By the way, copies of this are available over in our booth 228. Pending before this court is the defendant's motion, blah, blah, blah. It says, he even goes on to say that he believes we probably can prove all this evidence. But here's what he says we cannot talk about. Any reference to the plaintiffs, that's me, plaintiffs' participation in programs, operations, or missions sponsored by the FBI or the CIA or any other agency of the United States government, covert or otherwise, as well as any organization sponsored by or aligned with the U.S. government, specifically including but not limited to any programs, operations, or missions conducted in southwest Arkansas regarding the training of Nicaraguan nationals, the funding and support for any functions involved in the Nicaraguan conflict, and any contact or communications with operatives, officials of the above-named agencies or organizations. Any reference to President or Governor Bill Clinton and or Hillary Clinton and the Mina Ornella airports. Any references to Barry Seal and any alleged drug smuggling operation or other references to the Mina Ornella airports or to a business relationship of Barry Seal and Dan Lassiter, Lassiter and Company, and the Arkansas Development and Finance Authority, parenthesis ADFA, ADFA, and ADFA's former director, Bob Nash. It is so ordered this 8th day of March, 1996. That was our lawsuit. And out the window it went, which, as I said in my letter as I filed it back to the court, what I found most interesting was this motion went beyond our lawsuit. And nowhere in our suit had we even named some of the people they eliminated reference to, which obviously was their own admission that they knew exactly where their liabilities were and wanted to make sure that we didn't get into court and somehow bring in the real scandal of this story, which is the money laundering aspects of what was going on with the huge profits generated from the cocaine activity.
Many of you will wonder why I've decided to come forward today and how I can come forward as an ex-officer for the CIA, for the DIA, NSC. And let me explain that to you. I can come forward today because a federal judge has ordered at a federal trial that I was a defendant in, that the items that I wanted to discuss and present in my trial were not classified. And the reason he decided to do that is the last thing that judge wanted to do was allow that courtroom to hear what I had to say. He had to, first of all, under the CIPA requirements, that's Classified Information Procedures Act of federal court, he would have to get security clearances for all of the jurors, for the U.S. attorney, and for my attorney, and all of the clerks in the courtroom. No, judges, although the judges aren't required to have that clearance, he would have had to have his staff cleared. The clearances presented a problem in that it would have delayed the trial several months, and they would have had to allow me bond of some sort at that point. At that point, I'd been held without bond because I was a flight risk and a danger to society. The statement made by the Federal Bureau of Investigation after arresting me was that I had traveled outside of the country. Well, of course I had. That was my job. So that made me a flight risk. Even though my family lived here, I was still a flight risk. So I was held in prison. They can do that. They can do that for an undetermined amount of time in any federal case in the interest of justice. They can delay your Speedy Trial Acts in the interest of justice and because the courts are backed up. So everyone needs to understand that the federal court system is a very one-sided system. It's interesting that during testimony by federal agents in the pretrial portion, in the bond portion, federal agent is allowed to lie on the stand and won't be held accountable for that lie. They won't be prosecuted because it's very difficult for the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute their purported prime persons that will provide testimony during the body of the trial.